You can hear me, right?
Shabbat tov.
Okay, perfect.
Shavuot
Shavua Tov. We hear you a little bit, Moshe. So tonight's daf, Motzaei Shabbat, is daf. There you go. Now we see it. Tonight's daf is daf Tet Zion.
You're breaking up. I don't know if it's my end.
I think it's your
No,
end.
no, it's breaking. No, no, I hear it also in my end,
Oh,
breaking
then
up
it's my end. Hold on one second. How about now? Is that any better?
for now. Yep.
Please let me know if it breaks up again.
Okay.
Moshe, you hear us okay?
Now I hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. So please let me know. It could be just a lot of people using the internet or it's a glitch. I don't know, but we'll try our best. So today's daf again is daf Tet Zion, which is 16. But we are up to the Mishnah on daf Tet Vav Amabed. It's a really good place to start. It's actually a really important Mishnah, one that we've quoted several times already. It's so important. But basically, now that tomorrow we're going to finish the first parak of Bava Kama.
Yeah.
And yay. And I would say Bava Kama is challenging for many reasons. But one of the reasons it's challenging is that in general, the Mishnah, Rabbi Yudah Nasi, and the editors of the Mishnah sort of chose a strategy of putting very broad, non-specific, and sometimes unintelligible concepts first, as a way for you to start thinking about all the terms. But it's very challenging to wrap your head around it right when you start, coming from nowhere, right, from the beginning. So as we go on, of course, we're going to delve into more details. But today, we start by discussing, in the cryptic language, but discussing the first category of damage of a shor, okay? A shor, if you recall, we have learned so far in the last 2 weeks that there's 3 kinds of damage that a shor can do, an animal. One is called Karen. Karen is using their horn to cause damage. And the category of Karen, which we're going to discuss, it's about today's Mishnah, is basically an animal deciding it wants to hurt somebody else or something else, right? It wants to cause damage. So the classic example is using its horn to gore someone, or not someone, a thing, an animal. And the reason we use that example, of course, that's how an animal hurts things, but also there's no benefit to the animal, right? An animal doesn't get to eat anything or get stronger by goring something else. Now, it might be protecting itself from damage, right? But goring is considered one, and that's called Karen. And we're going to see today's Mishnah, the toldot of Karen are other ways that an animal causes damage, such as kicking or biting, right? Those are things that are just cause damage. The second category is regel, and the third category is shame, right? Regel means, well, I guess I did out of order, but let me just do my order. Regel means an animal basically, an animal walking on the road. An animal normally walks, but if an animal walks through a field full of, I don't know, strawberries, it's going to ruin those strawberries, right? That's expected. So an animal that causes damage, that way you have to pay. And the third one is shame, which is eating. If an animal sees a beautiful pile of, let's say strawberries, back to that category, it's going to eat them. And so that is considered to be something that gives an animal benefit. Remember earlier we talked about, for example, a tolda of eating strawberries is an animal going and scratching its back against a car, right? Because it's providing benefit potentially because its back itches, right? So that's a tolda of shame of eating. Says, now one more detail, sorry, I'll give a lot of introductions because it's complicated, is that the Torah introduces a halacha of tam and mu'ad. Tam means, I don't know how to translate tam in English, but a naive animal maybe, might be one way to translate it, and mu'ad would then be an experienced animal in that terminology. But basically, the Torah introduces a concept.
Isn't it an animal, like, is a tam animal one that has not gored another one more than 3 times?
Correct. So the concepts of tam and mu'ad reflect only the damage caused by Karen.
Right.
Shane and regel have nothing to do with tam and mu'ad. If an animal walks through the field, it walks through the field. It's not whether it's the first time or the 8th time, right? But by Karen, which is causing damage, we assume that animals don't generally cause damage. Cows are nice animals, and it's true about all domestic animals
For the most part.
for the most part. And so you don't expect your cow to walk over to another cow and gore it or bite it or kick it. If it does, that's where the Torah introduces this concept that you only pay chatzi nezek. Now, yesterday and the day before, we had a huge discussion about why you even pay half, right? But we'll leave that aside for now. You pay half. If your animal has done this several times, then it's called a muad, and you got to pay full damage. But that's only a prat, only a detail in keren. In shein and regel, there's no such concept as muad and tam, right? Because it's considered to be normal behavior. One final exception I'm going to say, which you'll appreciate this when we learn our Gemara, is that let's say an animal is eating food, right? It walks through the street, and I'll put that aside. It walks to someone else's yard and eats their fruit, right? That's called shein. So what if an animal walks into somebody else's yard and bites the tires of their car, right? That's not shein because animals don't eat tires, right? But that's called keren, because that's causing damage. So basically he's using his teeth to attack the tires of the car, right? So an animal would be a tam if it bit the car tires and you pay half, and it would be a muad if it ate the strawberries and you'd pay full, right? Because one is considered shein and one is considered to be keren, even though it's the same animal doing, similar action. So with that introduction, says our Mishnah today, Chamishat Tamim, there are 5 categories of animal that is keren, that is causing damage, that are called tam, and chamisha muadim, and there are 5 muadim. What are the 5 tamim? Ha-behima eina muadet. The behima is not considered to be a muad, meaning it's a tam. Lo ligach. Ligach means to gore. Ligof, which means to use the body to attack, to rub, not rub, but to like slam, thank you, their body against someone or something. Lo lashuch. Lashuch means to bite. Lo lervots, not to crouch down. Right? An animal sitting on top of you is not going to feel good. Right, so if an animal sits down on another animal, or as Rashi puts it, a small child, that can cause problems. Lo live ot, and not to kick. So these are 5 actions of an animal. It's always considered a tam unless it does it a few times, right? But it's tam, an animal that kicks or bites or rubs against someone or sits on someone or kicks someone or gores someone. I don't know what I did 5. That's considered a tam. What are the muadim? Now we get to the 5 muadim. The 5 muadim are shein. An animal that eats food, that's a muad automatically, as long as it's muadet lechol tara'oila. As long as it's edible, right? Not if it's a tire, but if it's food. And regel, number 2, an animal that walks along. An animal is a muad l'shpor b'derech hilucha, as it's walking, meaning it's normally walking. If the animal goes out of its way because it's angry at a turtle and steps on it, that's not considered to be regel. That would be keren, okay? But it's muad if it's regel. And the 3rd case is shar ha-muad. Any animal that has done something a few times already is a muad. So it bit another animal 2 times, it's a muad. And the 4th case is shar ha-mazik b'reshut hanizak. I told you that there's a difference in a tam and a muad, but that's only true if that's in public. But if it's in the possession, in the field of the damaged person, you're automatically a muad. Right? Because what business do you have being in that field? Now, I don't know if Miriam looked up for this reason, but this is a huge machloka that we've discussed several times, and we don't paskin this way, by the way. So the Gemara is going to ask why in the world we're going according to this minority opinion, which we will discuss. But that's the 4th case. And the 5th case is Adam. If your shar is a person, right, or your shar is not a shar, if you are a person, you cause damage, you don't pay half damage, you pay full damage. And Adam is considered to be mu'ad. That's 5 cases. Continues the Mishnah. Also, now that's referring to domesticated animals. But what about wild animals? What about a ze'ev, which is a wolf, an ari, a lion, a dove, a bear, a namer, and a bardalis? I never know how to translate these, but a namer is a leopard, I think, and a bardalis is unknown what a bardalis is, but someone might have an English that claims they know. And a nachash and a snake, all of these things, hare elu mu'adim. Right? If my lion, which I think is very peaceful, gets out and attacks somebody else's shar, then I have to pay full damage. There's no tam with the lion, right? You have to assume it's going to cause damage. However, says Rabbi Eliezer, I disagree. If you have a domesticated lion, if your lion grew up in your living room and it's a very friendly lion, that's not a muad. Now, unfortunately, sometimes it still misbehaves, but that's like your dog misbehaving. You have a friendly dog. But nachash muad olam. But snakes, you can't raise a snake to be friendly. So unlike lions, mammals you can. And Rashi says b'nei tarbut means you raise it in your house. So that's the Mishnah. Now says the Gemara. Let's try to understand this Mishnah, right? Mitiktani, our Mishnah says that a shame, that an animal eating food is mu'edet lechol, right? Now, where is an animal mu'ad if it eats food, right? Just to be clear, it's very confusing. I'm going to try to simplify it, but catch me because I might make a mistake myself. A shame is only chayav if you're in someone else's property. Because if my animal is walking through a public thoroughfare and it sees apples and it bites them and eats them, that's not on me. You should know animals are walking down the street. If you leave your apples out, an animal's going to eat your apple, right? You can't hold an animal guilty for that. So, since we're talking about shame, you must be talking about the animals in the field, the space of the person who caused damage. My animal walked into your house and ate your food, right? Your courtyard, I guess. And then it continues the Mishnah, Katani behema inu mu'edet l'shalem kula. A behema that causes damage in that place doesn't have to pay, an animal that gores, let's say, doesn't have to pay full damage, but pays half damage because it's a tam. So money, that's the Rabbanani. This seems to be the Rabbanan to Amar. And now this is a quote that we're going to have a later Mishnah, but very important. Mishuneh keren b'chatzar nizak. That keren is different, and that keren, as opposed to shein and regel, in the field of the nizak, you pay half damage, right? Because even though I'm in your field, it's my animal's not expected to gore your animal, and I only pay half damage. But if that's the chachamim, look at the next words in the Mishnah, which say shar hamuad. That the third case, remember, was a shar hamuad, and the fourth case was shar hamazik reshut hanizak v'adam. But that middle case was a shar that damages in the reshut of the nizak, which says now you're a muad. So that's on the Rabbi Tarfon. That's Rabbi Tarfon's opinion, who says that my animal that attacks another animal is always chayav full damage if it's in the person's possession. A reshut. Damar mishuneh karen b'chatzar nizak. That karen is different in that even in the not even but only in the courtyard of the one who was caused damage, nezek shalim hudu mishalim. So how does our Mishnah make any sense? The Reisha is Rabbanan and Seifa is Rabbi Tarfon. Right, the Reisha, which says we're talking about shein, and shein Yerchayev must be in the reshut of the damaged person. But then we say that a tam only pays half. But according to Rabbi Tarfon, there's no such thing as a tam in the reshut of the nizak. Then later in the Mishnah, you said one of the 5 muadim is any animal in the reshut of the nizak, which is Rabbi Tarfon's opinion. So how does our Mishnah make any sense? Says the Gemara in that is in fact exactly how you understand our Mishnah. The first part is the Rabbanan. The second part is Rabbi Tarfon, which is weird, but that's true. The Amar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel said to his student Rav Yehuda. Remember, Rav Yehuda was a student of both Rav and Shmuel. Right? Rav died, and he went and studied with Shmuel. And Rabbi Yehuda, Shmuel said to his student Rabbi Yehuda, Shinina, which was his nickname for him. Shinina usually translated as the one who's very smart, very fast. Shavuk matnitan. Don't pay too much attention to this Mishnah. Don't try to understand the Mishnah. Ta'abatrai. Reisha Rabbanan, Sefer Rabbi Tarfon. This Mishnah is a mixed-up Mishnah. It's not mixed up. It's several opinions. It's Reisha Rabbanan and Sefer Rabbi Tarfon. So that is how Shmuel understood our Mishnah. Reb Elazar said, I don't really like that pshat of the Mishnah. Bottom line, Reb Elazar Mishmei the Rav Amar, you know what? I have a better explanation or a cleaner explanation. It's not going to be so clean, but he's going to try. And I think Kula Rabbi Tarfoni. And in fact, our entire Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Tarfon, right? The problem with this interpretation is that according to Rabbi Tarfon, again, just to clarify, if an animal causes damage in the reshut of the one who he caused damage, if Ruvain's shar went into Shimon's field or Shimon's chatzar, courtyard, and attacked his shar, you'd pay full damage. So then how does our Mishnah say in the beginning of the Mishnah, there's 5 tams, right? A tam is where you go and you gore. You only pay half. If it's in the reshut of the nizak, you don't pay half. Says Rav, or Rabbi Elazar in the name of his teacher Rav, our Mishnah is not referring to the reshut of the nizak. It's not referring to the animal walking into Shimon's courtyard. So if that's the case, why do you have to pay when you eat the fruit? Right? If I eat Shimon's fruit in public, I shouldn't have to pay. So how could you be chayav for one and not the other? The case here is, it says on the top line, Reisha is referring to a chatzar miyuchedet lepeirot le'achad mehem ulezel shorim, right? The Reisha is referring to a specific area, which is why you can see why it's such a stretch, that is not private, it's semi-public, right? You have an area where people need to store their fruit, so it's protected, but animals need to walk through. You can't get to the other side without it. So there you put up a sign at the entrance that says, animals can walk through here, but beware, people are storing their fruit here. And therefore, watch your animal. It can't eat the food, right? So it's not private property, but it's private property in regards to the fruit.
So are we talking about kind of like a chatzer in between, like, several houses that are together?
Potentially, but it has to be a case where it's not necessarily owned privately, right? It could either be public land or it could be owned privately by a few people, right? But
Right, that's what I meant.
But there's permission for animals to be there. So if there's permission for animals to be there, and my animal attacks another animal, you can't say it's a muad, right? Because my animal's allowed to be there. But if it eats your fruit, it is a muad because I have to watch my animal.
Right.
So it's talking about the legabe shein havi lachatzer nizak. In regards to eating food, it's considered to be the possession of the damaged person. Legabe keren, but for damage, havi reshut harabim. And so therefore, in one case you pay, in one case you don't pay. So that's obviously a very big stretch, but that's how he explains the Mishnah. Rav Kahana, now Rav Kahana said, I said this over to Rav Zvid Minarda, the next generation. And he said to me, this is ridiculous. How in the world could you say, which is what Rav wanted to say, that our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Tarfon? Again, Rabbi Tarfon's basic rule is that if you're in the reshut of the nizak and you cause damage, you pay full no matter what, tam or muad, right? Meaning everything is a muad. But hakatani Hashem mu'edet lechal ro'ela. The Mishnah said that a shein is muad to eat food that's edible, right? Implying that what if the animal goes and eats something that's not edible? What if my animal chews on I said tires, right? Rashi says clothing, but obviously for a good reason, but something that's not edible, right? So my animal goes and eats things that are unedible. So ra'oila in, shein ra'oila lo. But Rabbi Tarfon, if it's going according to Rabbi Tarfon, and you're in the possession, in the reshut, in the chatzer of the one who was damaged, you should still pay nezik shalem, even though it ate your tires, even though that's not a chiv of shein, that would be a chiv of keren. But if it's in your property, keren would be chayiv also according to Rabbi Tarfon. Ella says the Gemara, la'olam it has to be Rabbananu. And we got to change our Mishnah. It just doesn't read the right way. Chesurim mechasra, it's missing all kinds of words. And now, this is always a discussion. Chesurim mechasra literally means it's missing words, but probably it means it's missing explanation, right? Bridging words. So read it this way. And this is how you should read our Mishnah. Change the whole thing around. Instead of what I explained to you when I read the Mishnah, which is that there are 5 times, right? An animal that gores and bites and kicks and crouches and pushes, and 5 muadim, which we then listed as being eating, walking, muad, in the Reshut of the Nizak, Adam. Read the Mishnah completely differently. The Mishnah is saying the following. Chamishat tamimim. There are 5 actions of a shar that are a tam. And imhu adu, if the animal does them a few times, it becomes a muad. And the same 5 actions are chamisha muadim, period. That's the end of the list. There's 5 tam and there's 5 muad, the same actions. And then the Mishnah starts again, basically. And it tells you, but shein and regel, so those were keren. Shein and regel are muadin mitchilatan. They are muad from the beginning. Vehechan muadatam. How does shein become a muad? Only b'chatzar nizak. Only if it's in private. If my animal's and regel, my animal's walking down the road and you left your pots in the middle of the road and it steps on them, I'm not chayiv. You shouldn't have left your pots in the middle of the road. Maybe you're chayiv for a bar, to be honest with you, but you're certainly not chayiv. Matkif la Ravina, said Ravina, 1 second. If now our Mishnah has nothing to do with a shar doing something in the Reshut of the Nizak, how do you explain the Mishnah that we're going to have next Sunday? Stay tuned, not tomorrow, a week from tomorrow. Hakatani Nekaman, we got a Mishnah on Daf Chaf Dalet, I guess it'll be next Saturday night, now that I think about it, which says the following, and this is a quote from the Mishnah. Shar hamazik v'reshut hanizak kesad. How do you explain, meaning what are the details of damage caused by a shar that damages in the reshut of the nizak? And the Mishnah goes and explains it. Now I understand what's the context for that. Yeah, Amr Bishlama, that I Riba, that our Mishnah today was referring to a shar hamazik v'reshut hanizak. So that's why the Mishnah later says, well, let's understand that. Let's unpack that, as the kids say nowadays, right? Mishum hachi katani ketzad. So you could all of a sudden introduce a concept and say, how does it work? But if our Mishnah is now, you're changing the language in our Mishnah. It has nothing to do with the shar hamazik v'reshut hanizak. You're rereading that differently. So my katani ketzad. Where do you all of a sudden get up and say how? You can't say how if you never mentioned it. Ella, says the Gemara, Amar Ravina. I got another way to read our Mishnah. It's just a variation. And this is how you read our Mishnah. Again, going back to our Mishnah. There are 5 cases of a keren, of a attack of a shar, that's considered to be a tam. You got that?
Yeah.
You're with me?
Yeah.
The 5 are goring, biting, etc. And if the animal does them 3 times, v'im huadu, if it gets used to doing them, chamishta muadim, then each of the exact same actions, goring and biting, is a muad. Period. Continues, or semicolon maybe. Continues the Mishnah. V'shein v'regal muadim mitchilatan. And shein and regal are muad the first time, right? Because shein and regal, you're never allowed to eat or walk in someone else's property. V'zehu shar hamuad, right? And that is considered period. This is what's called shar hamuad. All 3 of these cases. A keren that does it 3 times, and shein and regal the first time. And now continues the Mishnah, and a shar hamazik v'reshut hanizak, that case, machloket Rabbi Tarfon Rabbanan, which none of these words are in our Mishnah, of course, right? That's a machloket Rabbi Tarfon Rabbanan, and that's the Mishnah next week that discusses that machloket. And yesh muadim achirim ki yotzei be'elu. And there's other ones, and that is haze'ev, the lion, what's his name? A wolf, Ari, Dov, Bardlos, Namever, Nachash. And you want to know something, although this seems a little far-fetched because we're adding a lot of words to our Mishnah, there's a Braita that exactly says the same thing. Tayanami Hachi, the Braita says all these words. Chamishat tamimim, v'muadu, and if they do it many times, chamishta muadim, and shein v'regel muadim mitchilatan, and an animal eating, an animal walking is muad from the very first time, and that's considered zeu shara muad, kama, v'shara mazik v'reshut hanizak, and the case of a shar that does damage in someone else's property, that's actually a machloket Rabbi Tarfon Rabbanan. And furthermore, yesh muadim achirim ki yotzei be'elu, there are some other things that are a muad like these, and that is haze'ev, la'ari, hadov, hanamer, habardos, v'anachash. I'm doing okay? You guys can hear me? Good, okay. Now, that is the other way to read the Mishnah. In fact, says the Gemara, just the next lines are very straightforward. Some people, instead of saying this as a sort of a rule from this part, they actually asked a question that led them to this change of the Mishnah. Some, Ramalei Mirma, they asked it as a contradiction. Because what's the question? It's not our Mishnah says, Chamisha tamim, chamisha muadim. There are 5 tamim and 5 muadim. Now, we originally thought our Mishnah was listing the 5 muadim. And if our list, right, our deep shot is, our Mishnah is saying the same 5 tamim are muadim if you do them a few times. But in our first way of reading the Mishnah, Shmuel's way of reading the Mishnah, we were enumerating the muadim, right? One was a shein, one was regel, etc. And asked the Gemara, the 2 leka, there are no more than 5. What about a lion? Va'ika ze'ev, va'ari, adov, anamer, abardos, anachash. Umishani, and that's where Ravina answered. I'm Ravina, chasuri mechasur, that you're reading our Mishnah wrong. Hachi katani, and this is what we just read. Our Mishnah really meant to say chamisha tamim. There are 5 tamim, and those are a shar that gores, etc. And im huadu, if you do them many times, chamishtan muadim, all 5 are muad. And then we start over, and then we have a semicolon. V'shein v'regel muadim itchilatan. Shein and regel are muad the first time. I'm saying this like 100 times, so you get it. V'zeu shar hamuad. That's considered shara muad. And shara mazik reshut hanizak is very controversial. That's machloket Rabbi Tarfon Rabbanan. And yesh muadim achirim ki yotzei be'ela. And that's where the Mishnah continues. Hazev, Ari, Adov, and Amer, Bardos, Vanachash. And that's how you should read our Mishnah. So that is a machloket between Ravina, ultimately, who adds all these words, and Shmuel, or Rabbi Yudam or Shmuel, who had a whole different explanation. And Rabbi Yudam or Shmuel's explanation was, our Mishnah just makes no sense, but deal with it. Okay? Continues the Gemara now. We are on the second wide line on Tet Zayin Amud Aleph, and it's a lot easier from here on down. So if that was too confusing, start over now. The rest of the daf is much, much easier. I wouldn't say much easier, a little bit easier. Continue the Mishnah, lo lirbots. One of the actions that a shar is considered to be damaging is if it crouches down. You ever seen a shar sit down?
Yeah.
You don't want to be under it, right? Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Elazar, that's only lo shanu el pachim gedolim. When we say that a shar that crouches down and causes damages is considered to be like a shar that gores, that's if it crouches down on a big pach, a big container, like a 50-gallon jug, let's say. I know what big means, right? But if it's a pachim ktanim, if it's a tiny little container, right, a little teapot, then the shar doesn't even recognize that it's there, right? It's like a stone to the shar, and then therefore you can't blame it at all. Or it's the normal way of action of a shar. Now, what happens if a shar causes normal action damage? You pay full damage. Why? Because that's called regel. Right? Because if an animal is walking down the road and steps on your teeth, or not down the road, but in your house, you pay 100%. So this animal, if it sat down on a big thing, that's considered an attack. When an animal attacks, you pay chatzi nezek the first time, and nezek shalem if it's a muad. But when an animal is walking normally and sits on something, then you pay nezek shalem because it's regel, but only if it's in your reshut, not if it's in public, right? It says let's prove this a contention of Rebbe Lazar from a Braita. The Braita says the following: an animal is considered to be a mu'ad if it's walking along its road and it breaks things, right? That's regel. It's walking along. And if it crushes a person or an animal or objects. Now, how's it crushing them? It must be that sat down on them, right? So you see that if it sits down on them, but it's a small thing. How do you have a small person?
A kid.
A kid, Rashi says, right? You have a small child that the animal sat down on and crushed. That's considered to be normal for an animal. It doesn't see kids, right? Or little things. So says Gemara, well, that's not a proof at all. Because Dilma min hatzad, right? Maybe that's referring to not an animal that sits on a little baby, but an animal that crushes it, it's walking by the wall. The kid, or let's say an animal, it's easier. A small animal is sitting there and it crushes it along the way. But it doesn't prove that if it sits down on it that you're going to be chayev for derech hilucha. Igad Amri, some actually have this the opposite way, that Amar Rebbe Lazar, that I don't think that. Lo tema pachim gidolim hu. Don't say that you're only chayev for crouching down on big things. The lav orche, because that's unusual. Aval pachim ktanim orchehu, but small things would be usual, and therefore you'd be chayev for regel. Elafilu pachim ktanim nami lav orchehu. Really, an animal should never sit down on anything. Animals should know what's underneath them. They look before they sit, right? They don't want to sit on a porcupine. And therefore, if it does sit down, it's considered to be unusual, and you'd be chayev only chatzi nezek. Meitvei, asking what about the Braita? It says, that you're chayev if it crushes something. And then Rebbe Lazar said, it's talking about where it crushed it from the side, not by sitting on it. And Iga Deramale Mirma, again, we like that second time we're using it today. Some ask this as a question. That's not our Mishnah says, lo lirvotes. Our Mishnah says that you are a tam to crouch down and cause damage. But Tanya, we asked from the Braita, which says that an animal that crushes is chayev full damage. You're chayev full damage. And Rebbe Lazar said, it depends on how big it is. If an animal sits down or crushes big things, that's considered unusual. And that's an attack. And by attacks, you're chayev only chatzi nezek, because we don't expect animals to attack. If it does it several times, it's a muad and you have to pay. But kan pachim chitanim, the other is by small things, where that's just the normal behavior of the animal, and therefore you are 100% accountable for that. If it's in private. If it's in public, you're not accountable at all, because why are you leaving your small things where an animal can attack them? Continues the Gemara. The other things we said in our Mishnah are Ze'ev, Ari, Namer. I told you Bardalis. I told you we don't know what a Bardalis is. I assume the English in the art school is probably Bardalis. Yeah, that's a good guess. So ask the Gemara, my Bardalis, what is a Bardalis? I'm sure Steinsaltz has something. But what's a Bardalis? I'm Rav Yehuda, it's a nafraza. Okay? Happy?
No.
My nafraza. Well, that doesn't help me. What's a nafraza? I'm Rav Yosef, that's an appa. Okay? I don't know what an appa is, but I'm sure there's a translation somewhere. But again, not so clear. Okay? What does they say?
I have the French translation, but it doesn't help you, so I'm gonna look it up.
So there's an
It's
let's keep reading the Gemara because you'll see why this is not. You'll see why it doesn't. This is clearly not a very literal Gemara. You'll see from in a second.
Let's Rashi say what it says in the text.
My Appa. So Rav Yosef, sorry, not my Appa. Rav Yosef says that a bardalis is a nafraza, which is an Appa.
the
Now,
same
ask
word
Gemara,
in English.
Meitve. Says the Gemara, that can't be. Because listen, Rabbi Meir added cases to our Mishnah. Rabbi Meir Omer, Afat Savua. You should add a Savua, which I don't know what a Savua is, but it sounds like something that's painted, right? So you should add that to our Mishnah. And Rabbi Lazar said, you should add Af HaNachash, you should add a snake, which we're going to ask about in a second. And Rabbi Yosef said, what's the Savua that Rabbi Meir added? Zu'apa. So if Rabbi Meir is adding an Appa, and a bardalis is an Appa, then he's not adding anything. So clearly a bardalis cannot be an Appa, right?
So the French word that it says is actually a skunk.
It says the Gemara Lo Kasha. You know what? It could be an Appa. How did Rabbi Meir say, and also an Appa? Because one was referring to a male Appa, and one was referring to a female Appa, which are very different. Lo Kasha, kam b'tzavua zachar, kam b'tzavua nikeva. Tanya. Now you have to understand. Stop for a second. You have to understand that these appas or tzavuas or skunks or skinks or whatever you want to call them are very different. Because a tzavua zachar, you know what happens to a tzavua zachar after 7 years? I'm not sure 7 years of what, but after 7 years, naseh atlif. It turns into an atlif, which we usually translate as a bat. Which is why, again, it makes no sense, right? And atlif achar sheva shanim naseh arpad. An atlif after 7 years becomes an arpad. And arpad lachar sheva shanim naseh kimush, right? An arpad becomes a kimush, which I remember in translating as like some kind of lizard or something. Anyways, and a kimush lachar sheva shanim naseh chuch, and a chuch lachar sheva shanim naseh shade. It becomes a demon. So now you know how demons become, right? It takes whole centuries of growth in these animals. And you want to know what happens to people's spines after they die? Shedro shel Adam achar sheva shanim, 7 years after a person dies, you know what happens to their spine? Naseh nachash. It becomes a snake, right? Which makes a lot of sense because snakes look like spines, right? That's all they are. It's one big articulated spine. And hani mili delokara b'modim. That's only if the person never bowed down during modim. So if you never were bowed down to God and humbled yourself, the spine becomes a snake. But if you bow down, then you remain a spine, I guess.
Look at these biologists.
What's Miriam going to add?
Now I'm going to send actually a picture of the commentary from Art Scroll in the chat because it goes through all the different people that and what they think about what animal it is, and it's very different. So it's very interesting. Also with Greek and and Arabic and all of that. So anyway.
But I would just say that, at least, again, it's very hard to take this Gemara anywhere near literally, of course. But clearly, if you're referring to some kind of lizard that changes its skin, like that might be where they got some concept that it changes its character. But either way, clearly, and when you get to shade, you're dealing with non-real animals, right? So, anyways, continues the Gemara, the bottom line, Amar Mar. Rabbi Meir says, Afat Savua. Rabbi Meir added the Savua, turn to the top of Daf, Ted Zayin Amud Bet. Rabbi Elazar Omer Afa Nachash. So says the Gemara, when Rabbi Elazar says also a snake, Vanansnan, we learn Rabbi Elazar Omer Bisman Shein B'nei Tarbut Einu Muadim, right? That if your lion is domestic, then it's not considered to be a muad, but a snake is always a muad. So when he says Af Nachash, that implies a Nachash is just like everything else, but Nachash is a own category. A Nachash muad da'olam. Says well, you're right. Tni, take out the word Af. You shouldn't say also a Nachash. A Nachash is its own category. Says Rabbi Elazar, only a Nachash. Okay. Now, Amar Shmuel. I just want to get ground this here. We're at the fourth line from the top. Okay, of Amud Bet. This is a very important Gemara. It may or may not be very important Gemara, but it's a very complicated Gemara. So I want to clarify. So the Gemara makes a very interesting point. It's a fascinating and really important point, even though it seems you're going to ask yourself in a couple of minutes why we're doing this. Okay. So that's why I'm giving you the introduction. And if a lion walks over to a cat in the middle of the street, and my pet lion, right, walks over to, not in the middle of the street, let's say in the middle of the street. My lion walks over to a cat in the middle of the street and kills it, right? Am I chayav or not chayav? So that's very complicated, right? Because if my lion is attacking the cat, then if it's a domestic lion, I'm chayiv half, and if it's a muad lion, I'm chayiv full thing, right? But if my lion eats the cat, then I'm not chayiv at all, right? Why am I not chayiv at all? Because it's public. If it's a reshut harabim, my animal is allowed to go ahead and eat what it normally eats. Do lions normally eat cats? Yes. So my lion is allowed, essentially, to, now, this is a little far-fetched, just to be clear, because how in the world could you have a lion, right? So put that aside for a second. But if my shar in a reshut harabim goes over and eats something, then I'm not chayev. If it's in private, I'm chayev, right? Because I can't walk into your house and my shark can't eat your thing. But in public, you'd be patur. So lions, which are confusing because they kill things when they eat them, right? So the question is this lion attacking the cat or is the lion eating the cat? The Gemara says, you know how you can tell the difference? Lions like to eat food that's alive. So if the lion stuns the cat by attacking it and eats it before it kills it, then it's eating. It's not killing it. And then you're patur. And if the lion kills it, and which is just damage, and then maybe the lion's like, oh wow, there's a dead cat here, let me eat it. Then you're chayav because it attacked the lion. And the way the Gemara, that's my distinction. This is not so simple, but I'm simplifying it. Says the Gemara, Amar Shmuel, 4 lines from the top. In Ariber Shutarabi, you have a lion in public, right? This is why this matters. If it's daras v'achal, daras means that it doesn't kill it, it like drags it, it stuns it, right? The way a lion does. And if you watch, I've never seen a lion in my life, but do this. But you see lions on YouTube, right? They attack animals, they claw them, they damage them, they stun them, and then they start eating them, right? So if the animal does that, and then you're patur, because the animal's just eating. But if it's taraf v'achal, if it kills the animal, the cat, and then it eats it, then you're chayav, because that's an attack. That's not eating, right? Well, maybe it's eating after it attacks, but for the attack. Says the Gemara, why? Daras v'achal patur, if it attacks it and eats it, you're patur kiven to orchid and midras, havele kimisha achlo perot v'yirakot, right? It's like a cow that eats fruit. Just a lion eats cats, right? And havele shein b'reshut harabim. It's like any other shein in public and patur. But if it's taraf, if it kills the animal first before it eats it, lav orchehu, right? It's not normal for a lion to do that. And therefore, you're chayav for attacking, which you'd be chayav half damage if it's a tam, and full damage if it's a muad. Okay? It says the Gemara, 1 second. Is that really true? Lions don't kill things before they eat them? The memra de treifa lav orchehu, it's not normal for a lion to kill something. The pasuk says in Nahum, aryeh toref badei gurotaf. That an aryeh is toref, uses this verb of toref, which means kills, right? Makes it a treifa for its gorotav, means for its kids. Says no. That's bishvil gorotav. Listen, a lion hunts for its family by killing things, then dragging them back to the nest. What do you call it? Den. Dragging it back to the den, right? But for itself, it eats things alive. So it only kills them if it's going to bring it back. It says, what about the following pasuk? It's a continuation of the same pasuk. Umechanek, it chokes things. Lilav otav for the levia, right? For the female lion. That's b'shvil lav otav. It's the same answer. It kills things for its family. Yimalei teref chorav. It fills its hole with teref, with treifot, with dead animals. Again, b'shvil chorav. It does it for its chorav, for its kids. Umonotav treifa. Again, b'shvil monotav. So that's Shmuel's explanation. I don't know if Shmuel ever saw a lion in his life, but that was Shmuel's explanation. A lion that kills an animal is unusual, and therefore you're chayav for nezek. Ask him about Tanya, but what about the following brayta? It says, "V'chein chaya shenichnesa lechatzer hanizak." Ooh, now remember this is different. A chaya walks into the courtyard. My lion walks into someone else's courtyard, right? And then if it's tarfa behema, kills an animal, v'achla basar, and eats the meat, mishalim nezek shalim. Why do you pay nezek shalim? If it's unusual for an animal to do a treifa, it shouldn't kill it, right? It should stun it. The fact that it killed it is unusual. And remember, if an animal eats tires, remember that's the case, you don't pay nezek shalim. So why isn't it the same case? Says the Gemara, no. Sometimes a lion does kill. You know when it kills? When it wants a meal for tomorrow. This lion killed the animal to bring home, so that's considered to be normal. Says Gemara, but it ate it. Well, the lion changed its mind, right? After it got so tired from killing it, nimlacha va'achla. it changed its mind and decided it was now going to eat it. So the lion went and killed I'll use a deer. Well, I'll use a cat. I still like the cat. The lion killed the cat, but it was planning to eat it the next day. So then it's normal to kill it. But then it got really hungry and decided to eat it now. So you have to pay. Says Gemara, Minna Yadina. How do you know? Like, how can you be mechayiv someone to pay because your animal probably changed its mind, right? And furthermore, Shmuel Nami, maybe in Shmuel's case also, the lion that killed another animal in public, maybe it was planning on eating the animal for tomorrow, but it changed its mind. Amr of Nachman, it's like, you know what? You're right. Change the whole business. Let's stadin katani. You have to treat it this way. An animal that's tarfa lehaniach. If an animal kills another animal in order to eat it the next day, darsav achla, or it stuns it and eats it, mishalem et nezek shalem, right? Then you pay. Says Ravina, I have another explanation. Kikar Shmuel ba'ari tarbut. Shmuel was talking about a domestic lion, how would you say tarbut? A culturated lion, right? A lion that was domesticated, grew up in your house. And aliba Rabbi Elazar, right? According to Rabbi Elazar, who says lav urche, that a lion that you raise is considered to be a tam, and therefore that's why you're not chayiv. So if that's the case, then even afilu darsanami chayiv, right? Even if it's considered to be a tam and you're chayiv for eating, then you should be chayiv for drisa. Ella says, this whole thing is a mistake. Ravina lava Shmuel itmar. Ravina was not referring to Shmuel. Ella amatznita. Ravina was referring to our Mishnah. Ki tani b'matznita ari tarbut libed Rabbi Elazar. Right? Our Mishnah that says that you are chayev for a lion is where it's an ari tarbut. It's a domestic lion, and it's going to Rabbi Elazar, the Amar lav urche, and that's why you're not chayev. You're not chayev because lions that are grown up in the circus or in your house are not supposed to attack. And therefore, if a lion in public goes and eats another animal, it's not considered shame because you don't expect your lion to attack. Says, well, fine. But if it's not considered shame, but you're chayav for attacking, but why don't you pay half damage? Right? Why does our Mishnah say that you pay nezek shalem? Why don't you pay half? Oh, it must be the iya'id. It's where it did it a few times already. It's a muad. So your lion has already done this a few times. Says Gemara, that's great. But the final question I have with that explanation is Ihachi, my high diktani legabi told that is shame. Why did you have this explanation? This is a Mishnah later in two documents.
Sorry, I have to leave. So I'll catch up and I'll see you tomorrow.
Perfect. We're going to start from the Mishnah tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Why did we told it to Shane? Gabi did called it the Karen by the Mitznai. It should have said it by told it to Karen. And answers the Gemara Kasha. We don't have resolution of that. But we're up to the Mishnah. We could stop here because it's a short daf tomorrow. But the bottom line is that according to this explanation, a lion is considered to be depends on how domestic it is, but you're only chayav for Shane if your animal is expected to eat. If your animal is not expected to eat, then you're not chayav for Shane. You are chayav for attacking, which is what we call Karen. But Karen, you're only chayav half damage if it's a tam. If it's a muad, then you have to pay full damage. And so we should, we'll stop here. We'll go fast tomorrow. Is that okay? Tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m., hopefully?
I cannot commit to be available at that time, but do best for Riverdale's. And if I miss it, I'll either catch a recording or catch something else.
Would the morning be better for you in general? I don't think tomorrow, but in general.
Normally, the morning is good for me, but tomorrow in particular, I'm davening at a Shiva Minyan at 8 o'clock, which I normally don't do.
Got it.
So tomorrow the morning will not work. I normally would.
So tomorrow we're going to do
Sunday it would.
Okay, so tomorrow we're going to do 7:30 p.m. I hope everyone can join if you can't catch the recording, and then we can discuss every week what's best for everyone. Okay.
Okay.
Shavua tov, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll pick it up.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Mm-hmm.